Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. So today we're going to be painting Lilies of the Valley. I'm going to be drinking a little Chardonnay. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so the materials that we're going to be using today is a 16 by 20 stretched primed canvas that you can get at any of your local craft stores. And of course you can switch up the size, but I'm going to be using a 16 by 20. You're going to need a cup of water for washing your brushes. You'll need a paper towel for drying your brushes. The three brushes that I'm using today is a 1-inch flat bristle brush. I'm using a 1/2-inch flat synthetic brush. And I'm also using a number 6, I couldn't tell if that was upside down or not, so a 6 round brush. I'm gonna be using acrylic paints. The colors I'm using is Mars Black, Chrome Yellow, Titanium White, Green Oxide, and Burnt Umber. And of course, as always, you can switch up your colors if you'd like to. You can switch up your brushes, your size of your canvas, but these are the ones that I'm going to be using, and that's all we're going to need for today. All right, so for the first step on this painting, we're going to be using our bristle brush. We're going to be using black paint, and it's going to be the easiest step of all time. You're just going to be painting the entire canvas black. So I like to paint the edges or the sides of my canvas. So I'm going to do that as I go along. And as you go along, you do want to make sure that you don't have spots that are really, really thick with paint. So you'll see that as I go, I'm just kind of making sure I thin out the paint as I go so I don't run the risk of having areas of the painting that take too long to dry. So I'm using a left to right brush stroke, but you could do circles, you could do crisscrosses. With the black paint, it really covers the canvas well, so you don't have to worry about any odd painting stroke, just as long as you use the same painting stroke throughout the entire canvas, you should be fine. If you start with circles, continue with circles. Again, I'm going left to right. Or right to left, whichever way you'd like to say it. So I'm just going to make sure that I continue that same stroke throughout the entire painting. And as you can see, I kind of like to paint out any of my thick spots. And sometimes with these bristle brushes, you'll get what I refer to as cut marks, or like a straight up and down mark from the end of the brush. So after I get an entire area painted in, that's another reason why I just kind of go back and forth left to right to make sure I get rid of any of those really noticeable cut marks. And again, I'm just kind of making sure I cover the entire canvas. I like to hit those sides. I will wait until later to get the bottom edge of my canvas underneath the easel, because if I do that now, it will definitely stick to my easel throughout this process. And to avoid having to do any kind of touch-ups or anything like that, you can certainly just paint it later, especially since we're using black paint. You don't have to worry about any tricky color matches or anything like that when you go to paint that bottom's edge. And again, I'm just kind of painting out any really thick spots as I go. And as I finish up here, I'm looking to make sure that I've covered the entire area. I see a couple of little bald spots up at the top of the canvas, so I'll hit those before I finish. And again, just left to right, keeping the brush stroke consistent, making sure I cover the entire canvas, getting all the way down to the bottom here. Making sure I don't have any of those really thick spots, because I don't want it to take too long to dry. And now I'm just going back, making sure I've got all these little areas covered. I had a little bald spot up there that I noticed. And then just giving it one last left to right, make sure I've got all of those thick spots out. And then we are going to be switching brushes to that 1/2 inch flat brush after this step. So you can put this bigger one in your water cup and you can get your 1/2-inch flat brush out for the next step. All right, so for the next step, we're gonna be doing the outline of the leaves. We're gonna be using the 1/2-inch flat brush, and we're gonna be using white, yellow, and green as our colors. I'm gonna be using all 3 of these colors at once on my brush at the same time. So I'm gonna pick up all 3 colors. What I like to do is I'm gonna be making little dots for the tops of these leaves. So I'm gonna go on my left-hand side of my canvas. I'm gonna go about halfway up my canvas, and oops, I'm just gonna make a little dot. Then I'm gonna go up to the top of my canvas. I'm gonna come in maybe about 2 inches or 3 inches. I'm gonna make another dot. And then I'm gonna go over somewhere in this area over here, and I'm gonna make another dot. And then I'm gonna come down farther than my halfway point. I'm gonna come down a little bit lower, and I'm gonna come in maybe about 1 inch and make another dot. So right now I have 4 dots, and I'm going to create the outlines of my leaves. I don't want like a firm outline at the bottom because I want these leaves to almost like disappear into the black. So again, I still have these 3 colors on my brush. This one over here is just gonna be kind of like a thin leaf. I'm not gonna close it at the bottom, I'm just kind of leaving it open. This one up here, this one's gonna be a nice tall leaf. It's gonna have a little bit of a bend to it. And I kind of got it to join down here. You don't need to if you don't want to. I'm gonna be doing the left outline for these 3 leaves going down, and you'll see why in just a second. So I'm gonna do this one, and this one's gonna be just another kind of like an arcing motion. I don't need to touch anything else on this one. And then for the third one, again, I'm just gonna do the outside, or the left side of the leaf. Maybe I bring it up a little bit and down and through here. So now that I have the left side of these leaves, now I wanna make the right side. And the reason why I didn't do the right side initially is because I wanted to hit the left side of this one, and if it wasn't there, you wouldn't know where to stop. So now that I've got that marker, I can say, okay, this one is gonna be something like that. And the next one, maybe this one, I kind of pull in a little bit and bump out. And then the last one down here, maybe this one goes something like that. So now we have the exterior outline, and now we're gonna make one more outline for each one of them, and this is gonna designate the inside of the leaf versus the outside of the leaf. So again, I'm still using that flat brush with white, yellow, and green on it at the same time. So this little one over here, I'm not really gonna pay much attention to because I'm not gonna see the inside or outside of that, and we'll just color it later. But these 3, I definitely wanna have an inside and an outside. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start up at the top, I'm gonna bring it down a little bit, and then I'm just gonna kind of give it some kind of like gentle bend as it goes. And this will make a lot more sense once we start to color them in. So same thing with this one. I'm gonna ride this edge a little ways, and then it's gonna begin to separate itself. And then maybe I just kind of do another little wiggle like that. And then I've got this last one I'm gonna do. So again, I'm gonna start at the tip, and then this one's gonna come in through here. And I think this one I'm gonna close off right here. So that's the outline of the leaves. We are gonna use this brush for the next step with the same colors, so you really don't have to do anything other than take a break and maybe a little sip too. Okay, so what we're gonna be doing now is we're gonna be coloring in the leaves. I'm gonna be using my flat brush. I'm gonna be using white, yellow, and green, and I might use a little bit of brown too. But that I'll talk about in a second. I'm gonna be doing I'm doing the exterior part of the leaf. So that's gonna be the left section of these 3 leaves. I have the 3 colors on my brush, white, yellow, and green. And I am just merely coloring them in. I want the diversity in the colors. So you'll see that as I go to reload my brush, I'm going to be I don't always pick up the same colors. I may add a little bit of more white or more of another color. So know that this is not a step that these need to be perfect, and we are going to be doing a second coat on them. So don't expect them to look beautiful at this point. You can certainly just touch this one in through here, just get it filled in, but again, it doesn't have to look awesome at this point. Just making sure I've got the right shape. And again, it's not gonna look awesome simply because acrylic paints are see-through. So we've got this dark black underneath that we're contending with. So I have put 2 steps into this painting to get these leaves to look really nice. So know that they're not going to look totally awesome after this step, but just kind of bear with me, and you'll see at the bottom how I'm just kind of letting it almost trail off into the black. And again, I'm still just using yellow, green, and white for this exterior piece of the leaf. And once I get them all fully colored in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a touch of brown onto my brush and get the bottom part of them to be just a little bit darker. We are going to, like I said, have a second step on these, so please don't feel that they've got to be perfect at this point. We're just really getting the shape in through here, so you can have a nice path to go on while we're doing the next step. But once you're all set with getting these colored in, again, I was yellow, green, and white for the majority of them, and now I'm just adding a little bit of brown at the bottom to give them a little bit more natural of a color. And then I am going to be using this same brush for the next step, but I will wash and dry it before I go on to the next step. So you can wash and dry this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so for the next step, we're gonna be doing the inside of the leaves. I'm gonna be using my 1/2 inch flat brush that I washed and dried. I'm gonna be using primarily green, but I'll use a little bit of brown and a little bit of black also. I want the insides to be darker, and I'd like them to be a little bit lighter on the edge where they're gonna be meeting the edge of the leaf, and a little bit darker as I get into that real the interior of the leaf. So I'm gonna start with green paint, and because we're working on top of black, this will definitely get darker as it dries. So just know that it will get darker. I just picked up green and brown at this point, so I'm getting a little bit of green and brown, and then I'm gonna go into the black paint. So that way I can get it to almost fade into the black itself. So now I'm just kind of rubbing this together to get a nice good blend going. And I'm not gonna spend too much time on these insides because I want them to be really subtle and kind of dark. So the more paint that you put on them and the brighter that you make them look, almost the less natural they're gonna look. So once I get one done, I'm just gonna go right on to the next. I didn't even wash my brush. I just picked up some green paint, and I'm gonna put green on the edge that's closest to the exterior edge. And then I'm picking up a little bit of brown to get it to start to fade. And then I'm gonna pick up a little bit of black to get it to really just fade into the interior of the leaf. So here I go. And you can see I've got these little cut marks going. So what I do is I just give it a full brush stroke to work those out. And then and you can see also at the bottom, I'm just kind of letting this fade into the black at the bottom. So I've got that one all set. So now I'm gonna go on to the next one. Again, I'm starting with green, and I'm doing the part that I feel is gonna be the closest to the visual edge of the leaf. And this one doesn't have as much area as those ones do, so I'm just gonna go right into my brown kind of quickly. And then I'm gonna go into a little bit of black to get it to all blend in together nicely. And then when you're all set with this step, we're going to be switching brushes to that tiny brush or your smallest round brush. So you can put this one in your water cup and you can take out your small one in preparation for the next step. So for the next step, we're going to be using the number 6 round brush. I'm going to be doing the stems to my flowers, to my little flower buds. So I'm going to be using yellow, green, and white, and I'm going to be using them all on my brush at the same time. Again, I like to use multiple colors on my brush because it provides a variety of colors as I go through it. The first one, I'm starting here, and I'm going to go straight up and kind of like bend it. But you can certainly, after you see how I form these, you can certainly have them come out in any which direction that you'd like. And you can put more or less than I put. My trick is I use a lot of paint on my brush so that way I can get a really nice full stroke without feeling like I have to reload my brush. So I'm going to start somewhere in through here, and I'm just going to go up and over. And then I reload my brush frequently. And these type of flowers, gravity takes over. So they go up and gravity takes over and they fall down. So I'm going to do a whole bunch of these little stems in a variety of colors and shades. And if they lean over and go into your leaf, that's okay. But we just know that we do have one more step on the bright colors of the leaves, so you don't want to overpower them too much. And again, you can put as many of these as you'd like. I think that's enough for me. And then I'm going to do another stalk or stem going from in through here. I'm not quite sure where these, if they come like deep down in the center of these, but when I was looking at photo references, this is kind of what they looked like to me, coming out in different lengths. They can certainly go up and bend back down, but eventually the bud of the flower it falls like a little bell. So you definitely need these to go up and fall down because that's where the bud is going to be. And you can have several on a particular branch. I know that I'm going to have, this is my interior of my leaf here, so I'm safe to put some of these in through here without feeling like I'm going to need to paint that over. And I think I am just about all set here with this particular step. We are going to be using the medium brush that you have, that 1/2 inch flat brush. So after you get done with this step, I'm just kind of making little touch-ups here. Make sure my paint is thick enough and I'm digging the color here. Once you get this step done, you'll put this little brush away in your water cup and you're going to take out that medium flat brush in preparation for the next step. Okay, so for the next step, we're going to be finishing up the leaves on this flower. I'm going to be using my flat brush, and I will, at some point in this process, in this step, use all of the colors on my palette. So I'm primarily going to be using green, yellow, and white, but as I get down towards the bottoms, I will definitely be using a little bit of brown and a little bit of black as well, because I want to make sure that these don't look like they're just floating in midair. I definitely want to make sure they look like they're just fading into the darkness. So I will have to use some black and brown to get it to do that. But what I want to do is I want to get some nice highlights at the tips of these flowers. So I'm going to start with white and yellow on my brush. And first things first is I'm going to really accentuate the brightest part, which is going to be the tips. So right now I'm just using yellow and white. I'm using a gentle touch in through here, and then I'll use my green to just kind of fade it into the darker area. And this way I've got a really bright tip to the leaf, and it's making it look like there's a ton of sunshine on my flower. And I'm just kind of cleaning up these edges a bit. And then as I get down towards the bottom, or towards the back side of this flower, this is when, or the leaf, this is when I want to start getting it darker. So if your brush is overloaded with white, you could certainly just wipe it on your palette, wash it and dry it if you want to. I think I'm pretty safe to just kind of start going into green and brown. And I'm going to just start going onto the back side of this leaf. And I'm definitely going to start to use a little bit of black because I feel it's too light for me at this point. So I've got black on my brush right now, along with the green, brown, and yellow mixture that I have. And you'll notice, because you're just kind of using all of these colors in conjunction with one another, this is gonna create a really natural looking color on these leaves. And I definitely want to get this little guy over here to just be subtle. So I just added a touch of black to my brush, and I'm really just kind of dulling this down a little bit because that's too bright for my taste. I'm going to add just a little bit of green and maybe a little bit of yellow just to get this, again, nice and subtle back here. You might want yours nice and bright, but for me, I like mine a little bit more subtle. And you can see how this leaf just kind of fades right into the bottom. And again, if your brush is overloaded with black to go on to the next leaf, you could certainly wash it and dry it. That's totally up to you. So I'm just going to quickly give mine a little rinse here, and then I'm going to start back with that yellow and white combination at the top or the tip of this leaf. And this process might take you a few minutes to do. It's a pretty important step to the painting because you want this to show that there's a whole bunch of brightness on the edges of these leaves. And because we started with a black base, sometimes this does take a little bit of, of patience, a couple of layers just to break the darkness. And if you're having any kind of difficulty in getting past that black, you could certainly just put white on it, let the white dry for a couple of minutes, and then you can come back with any really bright colors that you feel you want to enhance the look of it. So again, I'm still just kind of working with my yellow and white at this point. I want a little bit more white up here, make it nice and bright. And for this particular brush that I'm using a really gentle touch, so that way I can get these paints to almost just lay on top of the darkness underneath. If I sit here and start rubbing it, you're gonna really quickly see the darkness underneath. So I wanna just get these colors to lay right on the top. Again, just so I can have some nice brightness throughout this particular section. And now as I'm getting towards the lower part of this particular leaf, as I'm going back up it, I'm going to start using more green just to get the darkness to start fading into here. And then as I come down in through here, I'm going to start using the brown, the black, the green to get this to go nice and dark as it goes down towards the abyss down here, towards the bottom part. I'm going to just get a little bit of that white off of my brush. Green, brown, black. These are my colors to get it to fade into the bottom here. I do want to keep that hue or that little hint of the edge of the flower, just so you know that it is a flower there, or the leaf. But I definitely want the viewer to know that it's darker down here. So that's why I'm using these nice dark colors, leaving the hint of the outline of the leaf still visible. And as I come up here, as you can see, it's just kind of a little work in progress to get it to take on the colors that I want. So these two I'm pretty happy with. I'm going to move on to the next one, just kind of rinse and dry that brush a little bit. And again, I'm going back and starting with yellow and white because I want this tip to be really nice and vibrant. So I've got the yellow and white on here, and I'm using a good amount of paint, and I'm just kind of letting it lay right on top there to keep it nice and bright. I definitely want some along this edge. And then as I get down towards the back side of it, that's when I'm going to start using my darker colors. And you can see this is just a repetitive motion or a repetitive step from one leaf to the next to get it as bright as you want it with as much sunshine on it as you want. I definitely think I want this edge to be just a little bit brighter. So you can certainly make any of these little tweaks as you want. And then as I go down in through here, that's when I'm going to start using those dark colors again. Just gave my brush a quick rinse. I'm using green, brown, and a smudge of black. And I'm going to get this to fade into the bottom here, leaving just a hint of the outline of the leaf and getting it to fade into the top part. Maybe go into a little bit more yellow and black, or yellow and green, just to get this to really look like it all belongs together. Oops, almost spilled my wine, can't have that. So watch your palette, don't spill your wine. And once you got that, if you have any little adjustments that you want to do, now is the time to do it, because once we're going to be putting those the flower tips on in a minute, and once we start doing that, some of them are going to overhang in front of these leaves, so you want to make sure you don't really need to go back and do touch-ups here. So that's why I am just kind of making sure I've got as much brightness in here as I want. As you can see, I'm just adding a little bit more vibrancy to these edges. I like it when it really pops and it really screams sunshine. So that's going to be that, maybe a touch more green. And then for the next step, we are going to be using that small brush, your small round brush. So once you get done with this and you have it as nice and bright as you'd like, well, I'm just adding a little bit more white to this tip in through here. Once you get it as light and bright as you want, you can put this flat brush away in your water cup and take out your small brush in preparation for the next step. All right, so for the next step, you're going to be using your small pointy or small round brush. I'm going to be using white paint only, and we're making the flowers. So these can come kind of in a variety of shapes, but they've got one really identifiable shape, and I'm going to give you a close look so we can kind of give you the information of the typical shape. So the typical shape is going to be kind of like a partial circle with like a flat bottom, and then you just scoot these little, almost like little wings out the bottom. That's the common shape. I'll do a couple more for you here so you can kind of see how they look. If you think of like a little ghost or a little bell or something, that gives you a good idea of what they look like. Do another one up and through here. They can certainly be different sizes, but when I've looked at these flowers in reality, they are pretty similar. You do have a couple of, maybe ones that are just blossoming that might be a little bit on the smaller side, or, the ones that have been around for a while, they could be a little bit bigger. But I am doing them primarily on the tips of each one of these like little stems that I've had come down. But if you want to, if you feel like you've got almost like a little naked space, you could certainly put one like right up close and maybe even right on that main stem. They don't just have to be on the edges, because you might not be able to see the stem of that one. It might be right behind it. But for the most part, they're just the top part of a circle, and then you do the little almost little flips or little legs coming out the side or the bottom and the side. Maybe like a little skirt. Could look like a little skirt too from, you know, I think I had one of those in like 8th grade or something. Ooh, I have a little yellow on my brush, that's okay. But you can certainly, I like this step because it's fun. I don't really have to think about it. I just kind of keep going and make all these cute little, I like them as ghosts. But you don't have to put, again, the same exact number of little flips at the bottom. If you find yourself putting 4 on every one, just kind of change it up a little bit. Sometimes when you get going, you really get a systematic kind of rhythm, and they all end up looking exactly the same, which doesn't really happen in nature. So you do want to give them a little bit of a variety. You could even put just like a little bud in there, which is one that doesn't have the little flip out pieces at the bottom of it. But know that gravity takes over on these, so you're not really going to have any that are sideways. They really just kind of all hang down like this. So just know that you really want them kind of all to be in a pretty similar direction, because that's what this flower does. And then I've only got a couple more here. And after you're all done, you might find that I feel like I want one here even though there's not a stem. You might find that you want to put a second coat on them. I'm using pretty heavy paint as I'm ending up doing these last few. But like I feel like I'm probably going to go back to a couple of the first ones that I did as the paint is drying. I'm feeling like it's kind of thinned out a little bit, or like I can see through it. So you might find yourself wanting to do a second coat on them. And if that's the case, I'm just going back and doing it. Some of these I use nice heavy paint so I won't have to, but if I can see a lot of that black underneath, I'm gonna just kind of go back and get them nice and filled in with color here. And then this in essence is the last step. So when you're all set with, well, the last step of the actual painting part, there's always one little tiny step at the end of every painting, which is your signature. So we're gonna do that in a second, and we're gonna do it with this small brush. So if you choose to do your signature with white, you don't have to wash this brush, but if you wanna do your signature with another color, you'll wanna wash and dry this small brush in preparation for your next step. All right, so the last step to every painting is signing your name or giving it your own identity. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm gonna sign mine in the bottom right this time. I still have white paint left over on my brush from my little flowers. So I'm gonna add a little yellow and green because I like to have a complementary color. I'm gonna sign it over these dots that happened while I was painting. And you can sign your name, you can put the date, whatever identity you want to do for yourself is fine by me. And that's going to do it for this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you love your painting, and I look forward to painting with you again sometime.